Hi everyone, welcome back to rawsynergytv. People often want to know how I clean my fruits and vegetables, whether they're organic or not organic. So I thought I would share that with you today. But first I want to say, if you haven't already checked out the Environmental Working Group's list of the Dirty Dozen, I highly recommend checking that out, and I'll put the link below. Basically, the EWG puts out a list of the worst sprayed fruits and vegetables. And they also list the cleanest fruits and vegetables to buy. And this is all based on conventional produce. So if you can't afford organic produce, I would definitely check out this list and be sure to stay away from the foods that are heavily sprayed and lean more towards the foods that are considered more clean. For example, top on the list of the Dirty Dozen is apples. Apples is number one. And that surprises me because I actually wouldn't think of apples being heavily sprayed with pesticide. I wouldn't think that they would need that, but apparently they are. The second most heavily sprayed produce is celery. And the third most is sweet bell peppers. So those are things that I wouldn't necessarily think would be heavily sprayed. However, they are. Also on the list are strawberries, grapes, peaches, spinach. Even green beans and kale have an even more dangerous pesticide on them to be careful about. So I would definitely check out that list, print it out, put it in your kitchen, get familiar with it, and maybe just go back to the website every once in a while and check it out just to see if anything's changed. I also want to add, because as I was looking at their list of the Clean 15, which is the conventional foods that are least sprayed with pesticides, I noticed that corn, sweet corn, was on the list. And I want to make sure that you all know to be very, very careful about buying corn, sugar beets, and anything that's related to soy. Soybeans, tofu, anything that contains soy. Be really careful because those foods are mostly genetically modified. And if you want more information, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen my video on genetically modified foods yet, please don't wait another minute and go watch that video so that you can be educated and really understand what genetically modified foods are all about. There's something that you really want to avoid. So when you're buying corn, I highly, highly recommend getting it organic. And as far as what I buy, I typically like to buy organic as much as possible. Whenever I can buy something organic, I will buy organic. And usually the things that I will buy that aren't organic are things like bananas, mangoes, watermelon, things with a really thick outer shell or outer skin, and anything that's really porous like berries, lettuce, and other greens, things that could easily absorb pesticides. I am very careful to buy organic. And if I can't get it organic, I won't buy it because I really don't want to be putting pesticides in my body. So that's how I buy my produce. Okay, so as far as what I put on my produce when I'm washing it, if the produce is organic, then I will typically just wash it under the faucet with just water. If it's really dirty, I'll use a scrub brush like this to scrub off the dirt. I love this for cleaning celery, and when I make my husband potatoes, we like to use this brush. And anything else that just tends to have a little bit of extra dirt on it. This obviously is great for washing carrots if you eat carrots and things like that. So a brush, a really nice brush, is great to have for cleaning your vegetables because it really helps to get the extra dirt off. When I wash lettuce, I usually like to fill up the sink with water, and I'll usually put grapefruit seed extract in the water, even if it's organic. And that's because of my experience with parasites. anything that comes out of the ground, I really like to make sure that I put some grapefruit seed extract in there, because this is supposed to be really powerful for killing microbes and bacteria and parasites and things like that. So I'll usually put about 20 to 40 drops of grapefruit seed extract in the water that I wash the lettuce in, and then I'll rinse it really good. I always buy organic strawberries for my husband, and I always wash them with just water because I don't want to put any kind of soap or anything on the berries because they tend to absorb stuff. So things like raspberries or mulberries, I'm going to be putting that soapy stuff on there because those are really hard to get out. So if I get something that's not organic or something that just has a lot of dirt on it that really needs like some extra help removing the dirt, I like this product. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but I get it at Trader Joe's. I think it's called Environne. You just want to make sure you rinse your food really well anytime you use fruit and vegetable wash, because you want to make sure that you're not eating the soap. So this is great. It removes pesticides, waxes, chemicals. And I've been using this for a really long time and I really like it. So I buy the bottles and I just fill up my spray bottle with the refill. And that works really, really well for me. I really like that product a lot. It's always a good idea to rinse off the outer layer of anything that you're going to cut into, like melon or mangoes, and just make sure you get that outer residue or dirt, anything that's left on the outer layer of the fruit, so that you're not carrying it into the fruit when you cut into it. Now, most things that I wash, I like to wash right before I use them, with the exception of lettuce and celery. Those are two things that I usually wash ahead of time just for convenience, and those seem to last okay when they're pre-washed. You just want to make sure your lettuce is dry or mostly dry before it goes into the refrigerator. Everything else will tend to spoil really quickly if you wash it beforehand, like strawberries, any kind of berries actually for that matter, grapes, and things of that nature that you might be storing in the refrigerator. Most fruits I like to leave out at room temperature unless they're getting really ripe and I'm not going to be able to eat them right away. Then I'll put them in the fridge. However, I do always store berries in the refrigerator right away because berries tend to go bad really fast if they're left out on the counter. So berries go in, but not pre-washed. And I always like to use a container that they typically come in like the grocery stores, the little plastic containers with the holes in them. That seems to help them last a little longer. I do find that citrus does really well in the refrigerator, so I'll often put in my husband's oranges and grapefruit inside the refrigerator to keep them fresh. However, they will last out on the counter without too much issue. You just don't want to leave them in a bag. It's better to keep them separate, otherwise they might tend to spoil faster. So if you're buying conventional produce that is likely sprayed, I would definitely use one of the fruit washes to remove the pesticides and herbicides from the produce, because you definitely don't want to be consuming that. And I really highly recommend not buying any type of produce that's porous, that the pesticide can really penetrate the food. It's still likely going to be inside the fruit because the pesticides go into the soil and they get sucked up through the roots and things like that. So you're still going to have some pesticide, but you want to get as much as possible off the outer layer where you have more control, a little more control over that. I've heard of people soaking their produce in like a sink full of water with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I've never personally tried that, so I don't know, and without being able to test how well it removes pesticides, I just don't really know. I like to buy locally as much as possible, to buy from the local farmers, and I've heard from many of the farmers that Even if they don't use pesticides or herbicides, they'll often use chemical fertilizers. So when you go to the farmers markets and you're talking with the vendors, be sure to ask them if they're using pesticides and herbicides on their produce, and if they're not, if it's not sprayed with anything, I would also ask if they use any chemical fertilizers, because often if they're not certified organic, they do use chemical fertilizers, and that's something that is not the best for us. It's certainly not as bad as having sprayed produce with pesticides and herbicides and things like that, but it's always good to ask and know what people are using. And also, if you have the ability, because sometimes the actual farmer is at the farmer's market, ask them if they'd ever consider using organic fertilizer or natural fertilizers or no fertilizer at all. It's always nice to encourage them, if you can, to use natural means of farming their fruits and vegetables, not using pesticides and herbicides, not using chemical fertilizers, using really organic methods of farming is the best way to go for the best taste, the best crop results. So it's always nice, if you can, to encourage the farmers to improve their quality of farming. Because you're a customer or a potential customer, it's important for them to know what people want. And always remember, you're essentially voting with your dollars. So whatever you buy speaks volumes. If you can buy organic, it's always best to do that, to let the buyers, the growers, and everyone know that that is your choice. That's what you prefer. And then hopefully down the line, it'll just always be organic. It'll always be super healthy. And we won't have to worry about pesticides and herbicides. So be sure to check the Environmental Working Group's link below for their produce guide on the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So that way when you're shopping, you'll have a better idea of what the best produce is to buy conventionally and organic. And just remember, the Dirty Dozen is the most heavily sprayed conventional produce, and the Clean 15 is the least sprayed conventional produce and the cleanest for you to buy when you're buying conventionally. As always, organic is best, but we can't always buy organic, so we do what we can. And this guide should really help you. And then anything that you do buy conventional, just be sure to get those pesticides off by washing it really carefully. So that's all for this edition of Raw Synergy TV. I hope this video was helpful. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the most current videos, and check out Raw Synergy's Facebook page for more encouraging, motivating, and inspirational information. So that's it for me, and I'll see you next time.